Okay, it's great to have the company of Michael this afternoon, and we're going to talk politics.
Absolutely.
And well, you actually studied politics, didn't you, at university?
I did, yeah. Interesting experience. Not the most useful degree, but certainly gave some interesting insight into the situation that we're currently in. Yeah.
It might prove to be very useful, because what I think is interesting is what I love is that you're optimistic about the future and you've got solutions. You're thinking in terms of solutions. So many people are moaning, angry, complaining, in despair, but they don't actually know what to do. And even if they did know what action to take or what they could do to make a difference, they just do nothing.
Yeah.
But we both, we've already established we both believe in people power, don't we?
Yeah.
And we've got hope and optimism that we can turn things around. So specifically migration and immigration, many people feel it's too far gone. We've gone too far down that road in this country. But you would argue that it's not too far gone and we can reverse it.
No, absolutely not. I don't think that it's too far. I think it would have to be a substantially worse situation even than now for it to be too far. I think it's certainly not going to be an easy thing to solve, especially where the remnants of what you might describe as left-wing institutionalism still is present in the British government. So even following, say, a Reform victory in the next election, which we can only hope is what happens, they would not only have to change the law, they would not only have to organise a system for restricting immigration, sending back illegals, and dealing with the administration of the problem itself, but they would also have to go in and remove a substantial number of institutional blocks to us being able to effectively control our own borders, and that I think would be the stumbling block that we might get stuck on. Whereas, for instance, like human rights law is concerned. So, to put a fine point on it, the ECHR would likely have a problem with us radically altering our immigration law.
Yeah.
And that sort of thing could lead to just a roster of lawsuits that the government would have to deal with.
Yeah.
It's something that Keir Starmer's talked about when he says, I keep pulling levers, but nothing keeps happening. Because every single time he makes a decision, a human rights lawyer pops out the woodwork and tells him that he can't do it. Because we are now, of course, thanks to our long interaction with international institutions, beholden to a massive, great big tranche of laws that aren't really, made in Britain, which is turning out to be a pretty substantial problem.
How ready are Reform then for these, to be able to implement or begin to implement these massive changes that people desperately want and that Reform are going on about? How ready are they? Do you think they're halfway there? I mean, if they were in power, in a couple of weeks' time or in a month's time, how ready would they be, in concrete reality, bureaucratically, bureaucratic reality?
I mean, the first thing that would concern me is that they've never run a government before. That being said, I do think and I have a brief experience with the Reform Party. There are lots and lots and lots of good people in Reform.
Right.
At the council level, I got to work with some absolutely fantastic people, and people that really did believe that we need to be treated differently by the government. That one of the biggest failings of the government isn't migration, isn't economics, is simply the manner in which it deals with us. The sort of lack of accountability, the sort of just simple decision making without any consultation, or ignoring large portions of the population when they ask for something. So I do think that there are loads of really, really great people in Reform, and more so than that, I think that even if their leadership might suffer from some problems, it can be quite factionalist, it can be quite cliquey.
Yeah.
And not just that, of course, there's been large numbers of ex-Tories brought into the Reform leadership, which I would say is probably not the greatest thing, especially when you think about the fact that they are the party that failed to deal with the problem for 13 years.
Yeah.
I do think that Farage is motivated to change this country, and I do think that a substantial portion of his leadership, like whenever you listen to Zia Yusuf speak, they are motivated. Whether they possess the actual resolve to break down and then deal with, well, what now? I mean, 29 years of kind of left-wing legislation in Britain, of kind of Blairite legislation, is an entirely different question. I mean, that's going to require just unprecedented levels of change to the British legal code in likely a very short amount of time. So,
do you share my feeling, Michael, that inevitably a political party or some good, solid politicians with real backbone is only part of the way out, it's only part of the solution, and that people power is going to be the other thing, which is absolutely indispensable if we're going to move forward and get out of this mess?
I mean,
would you share that feeling?
I would, yeah. I mean, definitely the only way that you can have a true mandate is with the people on your side. And I mean, if you think about it like this, if 2 million people went to London tomorrow to protest immigration, and it, for whatever reason, turned bad, and they decided that they wanted to overthrow the government, there is literally nothing the British state could do to stop them from storming Parliament. They would be completely impossible. So in a very real sense, the power of the people is that we outnumber people. We outnumber everybody else, right?
Yeah.
We have numbers on our side. That being said, there's another kind of facet to the people power angle that I'm quite fond of, which is that we have been convinced of this system, right? Of this kind of what you might describe as like the Blairist system, and now that people are waking up to it, they are just utterly unwilling to go along with it, and that sort of reaction, that dissent, I think is contagious, and there's only so much of it that you can ignore.
Yeah.
So definitely, people power, if we want to call it that, the power of the people, the vox populi, the voice of the people.
Yeah.
Is incredibly important.
What I often think, Michael, is like it's every single person doing their little bit in any way they're capable of doing, and different people have different strengths and circumstances, and it's just everybody doing their little bit to make a difference. And if we can get everybody to do their little bit in any way they can to bring about this huge change, then it adds up to something very powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just people buying British, I think. Buy British products. Go to your local patriot groups, work with your local patriotic party, whichever one you're particularly interested in voting for. If you are a patriotic Englishman, Scotsman, Welshman, Northern Irishman, whatever it is, British person, you should be interacting in every way that you can with the tools to advance the cause, if you want to put it like that. That's a very, I almost sound like a socialist, I think, actually, there,
Michael, you mentioned your brief foray into reform. I had an even briefer experience with reform. I've been to a couple of meetings locally, here in southern England, and what I did say was, what I've been thinking for a while is that reform have so much potential. It's so exciting.
Yeah.
But what we don't want to happen is for reform to go and make the same old mistakes that parties have been making for decades, go back making those, we want to avoid those classic mistakes. We don't want the same mistakes to be repeated because, we want a true revolution. We want to turn things around. We want to get, we really want to move forward now. But I think you hinted before we had this discussion, before we started filming, Michael, you said that you thought that unfortunately reform were probably going to make some mistakes, and that was inevitable.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. So it comes down to just what they are willing to do. And I think that while they are a brilliant starting point, certainly their manifesto has loads of stuff in it that I think will genuinely benefit the country. I have no doubt that they want to make the country better as well. That's the other thing. And they want to work against the current system, which I think is why they terrify the other parties so much. You know, no one party, I think, is as separated from the rest of the British political class than Reform. So, in the sense that they terrify the other parties, they're a good pick. I think they would make a lot of the same mistakes as, say, the Conservative Party, in that they wouldn't, well, to put a not too fine a point on it, they wouldn't go far enough. They would be very willing to start solving the problem in certain areas, but I think if we were to look at, for instance, actually tackling the problem of entire areas of Britain becoming culturally no longer British, they would be relatively unwilling to touch on that. And I think that the kind of old liberal words of power, if you will, things like, you are a fascist, you are a racist, still hold a huge amount of sway over Nigel Farage. I mean, if you call him, if you look at someone like Rupert Lowe, who of course was removed from the Reform Party and has now made his own organisation, someone calls him a racist, he simply just ignores them, because it is ultimately nothing more than an insult. It's not a serious argument. It's not something that proves anything, because it's just being used flippantly. Nigel will attempt to defend himself, which is obviously an incredible mistake when you're dealing with an argument with a leftist, is to just submit to those words of power, because they are nothing more than an illusion, really. And I think that's what Rupert Lowe, say, over Nigel shows. So I think a lot of the problems with Reform can be demonstrated and like highlighted by the difference that Rupert Lowe shows.
Yeah, that sort of, shall we say, emotional detachment, a refusal to get pulled into sensationalism and getting overly emotional about things.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Reactionary. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think reactionary is a fair way to put him. I mean, he's not. Well, he is, I suppose you could say, the next possible option.
Yeah.
If Nigel Farage fails, which, I mean, he has a track record associated with him now, doesn't he? Where he's very good at clutching defeat from the jaws of victory, if I can put it like that. He's very good at bringing things to a good point and then dropping them. If that happens again, I do not think he will be trusted any longer, really.
Right.
I think a lot of people lost trust from following the exile of Rupert Lowe from the party.
Yeah.
Because Rupert Lowe was saying the things that, in my experience, pretty much every Reform member believes in. I've spoken to so many over the brief period that I was involved with them, and every single one of them would echo the sort of things that Rupert Lowe was saying about immigration, the sort of things he was saying about the system at large. So I would say that a lot of the areas that Reform could go wrong are areas in which they differ from Rupert Lowe. I would say that in my perfect world, I would want him to be the leader of Reform. I think he would be a better candidate for dealing with the problem, because I think he more completely understands.
Many people agree with you, Michael. Many people would agree with that. Michael, you've touched on patriotism and on national identity. Now, this is a really big question, but I'm so fascinated to hear how you would try and nutshell an answer to this. Why do so many people on the left, or left-leaning people, or even leftists, why do they think that national identity and patriotism are such terrible, wicked, bad things?
Yeah.
Why?
Well, I mean that is a big question. But to put to kind of try and bring it down to something manageable, we could go back hundreds of years and look at the development of Enlightenment philosophies but we'll start with, say, post World War Two. When you look at leftist movements pre World War Two, very briefly, with say the Soviet Union, you have a understanding that there is a nation there. Stalin had his whole idea of socialism in one country. Romania, this is of course post World War II, but based on the pre World War II communist ideology of the Soviet Union, had national communism. There was a sense in which the nation was something that would eventually be transcended, but was necessary now, which is very distinct from what you might describe as like Western communism. So with the advent of people like Antonio Gramsci, he performed one of the first left-wing critiques of leftism, in the vein that he was analysing why the socialist revolution had failed in the West but not in the East, which was opposite to what Marx believed would happen. So Marx believed that as a society got more and more industrialised, it would increase the likelihood of a communist revolution. But of course, this is opposite to what actually happened. And generally speaking, developed countries have not become communist. What Gramsci posited was that instead of fighting a revolution where you get your band of communists together, overthrow the government, kill them all, and then put your people in place, the issue that Gramsci saw with this was that the population was still the same group of people. They believed the same things. They had the same traditional mindset. What he believed that you needed to do, in simple terms, was fight a war of position, where you would perform a long march through the institutions. You would put your men in places of power to infiltrate and then subvert the traditional culture of the population. So his idea of hegemony, which was that the national culture, the traditional value, what we would call like the natural nation, right, if you will, was created by the bourgeoisie and then educated into the populace.
Right.
And he believed, and this has been the practice of socialist movements, which generally speaking influenced left-wing ideology very heavily post-World War II. This is all, post-World War II, especially picking up in the 60s, is that by performing this long march through the institutions, getting your men in power, so in Britain that would be brought to its final point with Blair and the Quangos, with things like the Arts and Culture Commission, and you get your men in power with their correct ideology, and they then influence government policy, they influence education policy, they influence immigration policy, and over time you take the hegemony, that traditional culture, and you warp it into something completely different, so that the population will then accept communism. And you can then, mask off and stop pretending. I would say that is the reason why they consider patriotism, traditional values, to be effectively tantamount to heresy, just utterly evil, because they are a reflection of the natural nation. They're a reflection of what they would describe as the bourgeois hegemony, which in their mind would need to be obliterated. So in that sense, they are the very real elements of the enemy's system. So that's all they're doing. It would be the same as us when we argue against. If you were to ask, if a leftist were to ask, why do you think that immigration is so wrong? We might have better arguments for it. We might be correct, but it's the same principle.
Yeah. Now, just before we started filming, we were talking about the fact that a lot of people, left-leaning people on the left or far left, leftists, as you might say, do confuse the immigration and migration into this country in the past with what we've got going on now. So for me, there's no comparison, personally, for me, between what we've got going on now, for example, with the small boats, the migration and immigration we've got now, which in my view is chaos, virtually limitless, virtually unmanaged, and there's no comparison between that now and the immigration and migration of the past, but people on the left tend to confuse them, don't they?
Oh, definitely. I mean, there's you can't have an argument about immigration with somebody that's moderately well-read on history without them bringing up the Anglo-Saxons migrating.
Yeah.
Well, the Huguenots came here in the 1640s.
Yeah.
It's a very, very strange argument to make.
Yeah.
I think, and that is in large part just simply due to the fact that immigration, say pre-World War II, was just set up upon completely different principles as to immigration now. I mean, there was no sense of tolerance, if you will.
No.
The Huguenots, of course, Farage is a descendant of a Huguenot with his remarkably French surname.
Yeah.
He
had a German wife, didn't he?
Yeah.
As well. Yeah. They're not.
Yeah.
They're divorced, I believe.
But he is an Englishman ultimately, not a Frenchman. He's not a French Protestant refugee. Now, hundreds of years later, and of course, I doubt that his great grandparents were, or whatever it would be. They assimilated.
Yeah.
Point.
Yeah.
There was an assumption that you were going to assimilate, that if you were coming to this country,
and there was some sort of structure. Sorry to interrupt you, Michael. There was some sort of structure, wasn't there? It was fundamentally not legal. It was organised. Yeah. There was structure. There was some tangible objectivity to it. It was managed. Whereas now, we're in a situation now which is so immoral and so unjust in my view, whereby it's so insane. We're actually normalising illegal immigration.
Yeah,
we're normalising it now.
Yeah,
it's becoming. It's blurring into. It's just blurring into the mainstream now, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, how
Absolutely.
mad is that? Well, how crazy is that?
I mean, it's a perfect example of what I'm talking about when I say that the old hegemony is being annihilated. I mean, making illegal.
I'm going to have to check that word hegemony. I've seen the word in many books, and you're putting me to shame because you're half my age. I love it. You're so academic. It's brilliant. I love it.
I'm a nerd fundamentally, right?
Yeah.
That's
we're
the thing.
We're two intellectuals. Yeah. But I'm going to have to look that. I'm fascinated now. I'm going to have to look that one up later. Hegemony. I mean, you're probably going to explain it to me, but I'm still going to have to look at the dictionary definition later.
It's Gramsci's hegemony. It literally is just the culture instilled into the people by the bourgeoisie.
Yeah.
Or what he thinks is culture instilled into the people by the bourgeoisie. I would disagree with that. I would say that it is just the natural nation, if you will, the natural national culture developed over centuries.
Yeah.
I think has very, very little to do with the bourgeoisie. In fact, the way that they act would be a part of it, but that's not my point. I think that the normalization of illegal immigration is a brilliant example of the destruction of this hegemony, in that would have been considered completely mental by the hegemony. We would consider it insane. Anybody that agrees with the old hegemony, the traditional nation, would also consider it to be completely and utterly insane.
Yeah.
You have to be of the mindset that you're preparing a people for communism to even remotely accept that it's not completely insane. So in an attempt to normalise it, what they are attempting to do is use institutional control to condition the people for communism. That is the end game of the Gramsciist thought process, and that's just part of it. There are 1,000,001 examples as well.
There's so many things about what's going on now, Michael. I mean, if you'd have told me, 25 years ago that we were going to be where we are now, I think a big part of me would have thought you were delusional or bonkers.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so much. I use the word surreal a lot now.
Oh, yeah.
There's so much that's going on now in our world and in the news, Michael, that is so bonkers and so extreme. You think, can this actually be happening?
It doesn't feel real.
It's surreal. Can this really be happening? And of course, we know, unfortunately, the answer is yes, it is happening.
Yeah.
No wonder some people view people like you and I as conspiracy theorists, or think that we're unhinged, because the stuff that we've woken up to and that we're telling people about and that we've discovered is so unbelievable and so evil and so extreme. No wonder some people look at us and think that we're conspiracy theories. They think we're unhinged.
Yeah.
Because it's so undigestible.
Yes. I mean, it's the system that we currently have in place presents itself as being the only possible option, which and you know, this is very much seen through education. I mean, you mentioned something earlier, which is that you know, we are told constantly that we are a nation built upon tolerance, diversity, multiculturalism, right? You know, which is the same thing that, you know, as I mentioned, seemingly every Western nation is built upon. It's what we are constantly told. It's a universal system.
Yeah.
You know, the leftist thought process applies that everywhere.
Yeah.
The propaganda's the same, right? You might say.
But now it's become like, I've heard it described a few times as suicidal empathy.
Yeah.
Now,
That's a brilliant way to describe it. That's a brilliant way to describe it. Yeah, suicidal empathy.
Yeah, we've become almost so accommodating and so nice. It's actually almost wicked now. Actually destructive.
Caring at any possible cost.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's completely insane.
Yeah. Do you know, isn't it amazing how quickly the time goes? I mean, we could talk for hours, and I'd like to do more with you, Michael, if that's all right. I'm not very professional today. I haven't got a clock here, so I'm just going to look at the time on there. Oh yeah, we're on 26 minutes 26. Already. Wow. Yeah. So, I was going to say, just to wrap up, because we said half an hour, didn't we? I can't believe how quickly it's gone.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Yes, absolutely. Now, we're talking about solutions, we're talking about optimism. We both agree that we can turn things around.
Yeah.
Many people don't believe that at all. They're despairing, they don't know what to do, they don't know who to turn to. But yeah, in a nutshell, what do we need to do then?
Oh, that's
people power and parties like reform. We've already said.
Yeah.
Put those two things together. Everybody doing their little bit in any way they can.
Well, I'm not sure I'm necessarily the right person to advise on that. I am not a particularly experienced person. You know, I might have
a lot of faith in you, though, Michael.
I know my theory. That's the thing, and that's anybody can learn that, right?
Yeah.
But experience is different. I don't have the lived experience, the life lessons in me to say like this is the path we must take to solve it. But I can offer one idea.
Yeah.
Which I think would be a good place to start.
Yeah.
And it would be for the government to fundamentally change the way that it deals with everyday people. So to combine the idea of reform and people power, well, reform is about getting the government out of a huge amount of stuff that it's currently doing. It wants less government interaction with everyday people. I think that's a good starting point to really make it truly a movement that incorporates people power. I would say the government fundamentally needs to start treating people like adults.
Yeah.
We cannot keep living in a society where every single possible thing that goes wrong has to be reported to the government, has to be mentioned to the government. I mean, there is a place, I think, for instance, for a little bit of fighting outside of pubs. I think there is a place for a little bit of community solutions to problems.
Yeah. For
occasionally for a robber to get beaten up and for that not to result in somebody going to prison for defending themselves, right? I think that that is fundamentally how things need to change. It's not just a reduction of government.
Localism.
Yeah. It's also that we need to start treating people like they know what the hell they're doing.
Yeah.
Because they do. Yes. They're responsible adults.
Yeah.
So it's well, what's the term?
I used to get so angry with the way
get rid of the nanny state.
The nanny state. Yeah. I used to get so angry with the way that people who voted for Brexit, for example, were patronised as if they were, or the way that I know we're wrapping up now, but the way that people who are, you might say working class, or people that are not particularly academic or knowledgeable, how the political class often look down on them and say, oh, well, they don't know enough, they can't make decisions, they don't know anything. And that really makes me angry, because just because people aren't academic, like maybe we are, or just because people aren't, academic, or just because people, are not haven't done a lot of reading and research and all the rest of it, doesn't mean they can't feel things and sense things. And I hate the way that so-called working class people are patronised by the political classes if they don't know anything. They can feel things, they can see things. In fact, sometimes they can see and sense and feel more than the so-called educated people can see.
Absolutely, they're plugged in, they're connected.
Yeah, exactly.
So they know what's going on.
Yeah.
I mean, who's I'm trying to think of his name now. Was a councillor, Lee Anderson.
Yeah.
Is a brilliant example of this. Lee Anderson's like 10 out of 10 on stuff that I agree with.
He's a proper geezer, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's a geezer.
Well, he's got life experience, hasn't he? He's got lived experience. His knowledge isn't academic, it's experiential. He actually was a working class man.
And he can smell BS.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. He can tell when someone's lying to him.
Yeah.
And I think that's what it is. We can tell when Keir Starmer is telling porkies. You just can. You know when they're lying to you.
My father was a tollmaker. I think you can do it better than me. Harder and faster.
The return
Smash
of
the
sausages.
Yeah. Go on, say that again.
The return of the sausages, of the hostages. You can tell when he's not being honest. And
let's face it, Michael, he is a sausage.
Yeah. That is it.
And that's putting it extremely politely.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Thank you, Michael. We'll have to leave it there.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately. Thank you. Speak to you soon, Michael.
Speak to you soon.
Yeah, I shall. 1 second.